Hello and greetings. Welcome to our second panel. And this is GatherVerse Europe Tech for Humanity Summit. So far, so good. Europe is sharing her thoughts and we're loving it. So, we're here to talk about the realities of today, who is included and who is left out. With me, I have a group of expert panelists. Some of them you know them, some of them are new, and we're very happy to welcome them here at GatherVerse. So, panelists, I'd request you to kindly mute your mics until called upon, and we shall be brief with our expressions, and we shall also be just share from your heart, all right? So I will start with you, Sean. I will start with the introductions from you, Sean, all the way, and we're gonna conclude the introductions with Dr. Venu. And I ask you to be brief, tell us who you are and why you're here. Sean, please.
Hi, thank you, Lynn, for putting this together. This is awesome, and all the other panelists. I'm Sean Mann, CEO and co-founder of RP1. We created the first 3D browser, which you can experience today at rp1.com. And really, this is going to enable the next open ecosystem that's going to power the spatial internet. So if you think about how important the browser was for the current internet, we've created a way for all 3D, including the future of AR, to be fully connected everywhere in the world. And so we're happy to be here and share our thoughts. Thanks so much, Lynn.
Yes, that is very impressive. We're looking forward to engage you with if you're including people or not. We're looking forward to hear from you. Lauren, over to you.
Hi, I'm Lauren. I started studying virtual and augmented reality at Chapman University about 5 years ago, and then I went on to get my master's in VR, and I've worked in the field since then. I'm here really just to talk about the future of immersive technology and artificial intelligence, and yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we're very happy to have you once again, Lauren. Ian, nice to see you again. Tell us who you are for those who don't know you.
All right. I'm the founder of Hola Hybrid Online Live, where I try to guide many ordinary school students. They can enjoy international school level education effect with very small amount of tuition. And I guide them based on logic, cognitive science, and AI-based education methods. My ideal is to provide every single student with a personal mentor or tutor, or so as you know, many people have lost their job nowadays due to
Yes.
the rise of AI. So those people need their job. So I think this kind of model could be the best job opportunity for them as well, because my model is based on the micro group learning approach. So small groups of students need
Yes.
as many numbers of teachers. So I think that's what I'm trying to do right now.
Oh, that's impressive. We're very happy to have you once again. Professor Dr. Vera, if I pronounced it right. If I didn't, please correct me. Over to you.
Greetings of the day. I'm from India. I'm basically an educationalist who's been working for more than 30 years and trying to bridge social and economic gaps by empowering marginalized groups and promoting equal opportunities in education, employment, healthcare, and civic engagements. We are looking into a lot of quality assurances and supports which needs to develop for more inclusive communities and strengthen social bonds,
Yes.
particularly for vulnerable or historical excluded populations.
Wow.
Thank you very much.
All right. We're very happy to hear from you. And did I pronounce it right? Is it Professor Dr. Vera? Did I do it right?
Yes, Veera
Oh,
Talukdar.
all right. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. Rui, over to you.
Hello, everybody. Rui Pereira, longtime creative technologist. Been working with technology and tools also in my studio, Humanus, which is a boutique of immersive technology. We look at tools. We look at technologies as tools, and as such, they should be used to make your life easier, better, happier. Happy to be here and share my perspectives.
All right, we're very happy to have you as well. Thank you for joining us. Dr. Venue, you're always with us, and we very appreciate your presence. Please tell us who you are for those who don't know you.
Good morning, all of you, the panel members. Because my introduction is that recently, last week, we started, so many people are talking about AI, but we started AI integration with industry like supply chain and healthcare and education. Because I love to drive the AI literacy program. We have been completed 50,000 students have been educated on AI of the basic fundamentals, and another target is by December or by March, another 50,000 students should be educated.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. We welcome you once again, and thank you
Yeah,
for always being
thank
with
you.
us.
Thank you, Rani.
And panelists, shall we begin with our discussion today? Yes. All right. That's a good signal. Sean, I'm gonna start with you, and anyone can chime in as well. You know, what is the reality of today? What is inclusion? Let's define inclusion. What is inclusion to you, Sean? What is inclusion to you, Dr. Vera? Tell me.
Yeah, I think the technology itself is important where all people can build and deploy not only their content and their creations, but the tools and things that make it possible. And I think the biggest example today is the World Wide Web. We have the most inclusive set of technologies that's created a open ecosystem where everyone can build, and you're not controlled by any one company. And the biggest challenge today is that we have some of the biggest tech companies that want to own the next 3D space for the internet, and it's going to really keep a lot of people out as far as building tools and things to participate. And so if we want an inclusive technology that brings the world together, it needs to be in an open ecosystem.
Yes, so inclusion for you is an open ecosystem, right?
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
All right.
For
Okay.
for
All
me,
right.
yeah. Should I?
Yes, 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 please.
Yeah. So this is basically inclusion we are talking about is digital inclusion. So equal access to technology that would include affordable bandwidth, devices, reliable internet infrastructures for everyone. And then the second part that we would like to also attend and inclusion is that the digital literacy and skills
Mhm.
that individuals must have the knowledge of safety navigating, utilize, and create digital content with minimizing barriers to participants. The
Yes.
thirdly is it should be accessibility and usability.
Mhm.
Digital platforms must be designed to accommodate diverse needs,
Mhm.
including those of the people with disabilities of limited technological skills. And lastly, which I feel is the inclusive policies and support. Government, businesses, and the communities should collaborate to address institutional and structural barriers that perpetuate the digital divides that we are finding nowadays. So,
Yes.
according to me, this I mean.
Right, right. Professor, that was well put, and how you highlighted it, it couldn't be said better. When you were talking, Professor, really, I couldn't help but see you agreeing to everything that she was saying. Briefly, just tell us what you think.
Yeah, I totally agree with Professor Dr. Vida. I think we don't need to define inclusion. We already know what inclusion means, and many of us have been, fighting to, not only, have everybody access technology, but everybody, depending on their creed, where they come from, their culture, their intellectual abilities, or even, their digital, literacy. So it is that all of us can access in the same level technology.
Hmm.
Parity, I think it's another nice word to put into the conversation.
Yeah.
Um, I think that right now there's a huge paradox, and a paradigm of in the sense that we are with AI, for example, getting much, much closer for everybody to access tools, to access knowledge, to even build things, right? We have vibe coding, etc.
Yes.
But on the other hand, we also are creating barriers. huge
Mm-hmm.
barriers
Oh, that's good.
because right now, not everybody has access to AI, or maybe right now, a lot of people have access to AI. But we
Yes.
know from the industry and the history that this is just a moment, a flippity moment in time. And soon enough, we'll have not only subscriptions that will become barriers to access, we will then then the premium subscriptions will come, which will become, even more differentiation. So I think it's a very interesting time to talk about this and to really think and look at the world that we have right now. That,
Yes.
with AI, we have, the multimodality of AI is fantastic because computer systems can see, hear, talk, understand the world in its all modalities. So, for example, in terms of accessibility, we are much better equipped to actually create access, with different modalities that we had before, right? A computer can just talk or text or can tell you what it sees if you cannot see by yourself. So
Yes,
that's
Doctor.
fantastic.
Right.
But then,
I'm gonna put you on hold on that. I'm gonna put a pen on that. I'm coming to you on that. But before we even go to where you are going, Lauren, I was just wondering. You know, Dr. Vera has expressed, Rui and Sean has expressed. We have said inclusion is a matter of openness. But I'm just wondering who is paying the price for inclusion? Who benefits? Okay, if who will benefit actually, and who pays the price for accessibility? Who caters the costs for things to be accessed to the world? Lauren.
Yeah. So I think that the inclusion often profits the corporations. So
Yes.
having big companies, and it just kind of depends on what you're using it for. But I think that having inclusive environments in the Web3 space and digital space can be really powerful, especially when connecting companies that are all virtual and kind of spread out through the country. So having a space where they can work on whiteboards and have people actually feel like they're there and have agencies. So being able to adjust the different settings and spaces within the 3D world.
Mhm.
Um,
Right.
yeah.
So big corporations they do benefit. Let's be honest, that's for real. But Aaron, who pays the cost then? Is it the big corporations or is it the governments or who pays the cost for inclusion?
Well, I mean, if the proper inclusion is realized in the world, obviously, I think the privileged, who used to have a privilege for their own information and professionals, I think they would, have to pay the cost. Especially in terms of education, in the traditional world, like only privileged ones who could have the professional tutors or like a professional like teachers or all kinds of those programs or systems. But now now that everybody can enjoy this sort of program, and then
Mhm.
obviously there could be that one because the previous one they would lose their kind of authority and their yeah, prestigious rights. But the thing is, I kind of differently define the definition of inclusion. Inclusion is should be differentiated from accessibility to
All right. Uh-huh.
now. I think inclusion is all about human emotion, human
Yes.
connectedness, social connectedness. So there is a like a big paradox. So people have to learn about these AI technologies nowadays, but at the same time, for many learners, they
Yeah.
they shouldn't learn too much. They shouldn't heavily rely on technology. So that's exactly what I'm thinking and what I'm doing. So students needs to refrain from using AI when they learn things.
Yes.
Their personal guides or teachers or tutors, they can fully utilize the AI and then they can guide them. So I think tutors or this kind of people could be play a big role in
Uh-huh.
guiding them in the right direction. So use this sort of technology for the
Yeah.
future, but please refrain from using this sort of technology or something like that. They
All right. All
should
right.
have some sort of like a
All
guideline.
right, Han. All right, Ian. I've had you at that. Thank you for highlighting the difference between accessibility and inclusion. I think that was well put. Dr. Venue, I'm coming to you. And what determines the limits of access in technology, finance, and the society in general? Who determines the limits? This is how far you can get access. Who is there a cap? Is there someone who says this is how far you can access this? All right,
Yeah,
Dr. Benny, I want to hear from you. And also,
yeah,
see we nodding to that. I'll briefly hear from you, but Dr. Benny, kindly chime in briefly.
sure. Because now today society is divided into,
Yes.
as this digital division is happened. Complete world. You take any city, there is a bifurcation on the digital dividing. Digital dividing in the sense of modern society, one is a focus on technology now. We are being driven by the technology, complete digital world. One is that how to access the technologies is one part of the world. Another is that how development of AI is that. But the victims of this digital division, one is that youth and elder people who has been not educated on AI technologies or latest digital technology. Another is the people who have been senior citizens. They
Mm-hmm.
cannot upskill themselves. I was reading one article in US
Yes.
senior citizens, they cannot able to place an order online. The
Mm-hmm.
groceries needs to be delivered. They
Yeah.
need volunteers has to come to their doorstep and they have to use the application to place an order.
Mm.
So that is the barrier it is building because we are all talking about the benefit, but this is the one. Second is that community engagement is missing because technology is making people to all together far
Yeah.
away. Because today this panel is there was because it is bringing all the panel people together on the one platform. Another is that the victims of the technology advancement is that low income population
Mm-hmm.
because they cannot afford digital infrastructure because the
Yes.
entire world is not able to give the digital infrastructure because internet we got it 15 years back, but internet today is that it is a basic commodity like electricity, water. How internet is become a part of life, it should be a free of cost for each citizen because today you step out from the home without internet, there is no life. If the
Yes,
person is,
I completely agree with what you're expressing, and even thank you for highlighting
yeah, thank you.
people like the older ones, right? I come from a very young continent. I come
Yeah,
from a very young continent, and the essence of even including the older ones, the elder ones, I think
yeah,
that really stands out. And most of them can't even buy or order online. But I feel
true.
like that's very essential that we include them. Rui and Sean, I've seen you agreeing to what Dr. Venu has been saying. Rui, briefly touch on what we're talking about right now.
Thank
All
you.
right. First, I just want to disagree with Ian and then answer the second question really briefly. I believe that there cannot be inclusion without accessibility. They're two different things, I agree, but accessibility is important. We need all the voices. To answer the second question, who benefits from inclusion? All of us, humanity. That's who benefits from inclusion. The more voices we have present in these discussions, in these developments, the better. We know that. Third, who determines the limit in access? Right now, governments and big tech. And right
Mm,
now, governments and big tech are very tied together in some of parts of the world to really control even further and to relegate, human rights, for example. Even in terms of information and access to your own information, that's also a human right. So that's my really quick hunch.
yes, and I totally agree. And everyone here has their different perspectives, and when
Yeah,
everyone chimes in, I truly believe it's super valuable. And I love how we're getting where we want to get for the benefit of humanity. Sean, what is your
Yeah.
take?
Yeah, I think the panelists have all had great comments. I completely agree. We do have a challenge of just even basic internet access. I mean, I think we're still at like 35% globally. I think that was a year or two ago. I'm not sure what it is today of people that don't have access to the internet. And I
Billions.
think that Yeah, and I think the challenge is it's going to get worse. And what I mean by worse for those people is that when you start introducing AI, which is going to take jobs away from people, your education has become more important. And with the lack of teachers that exist on the planet, I believe AI is going to transform the educational system. And to not
Yes.
have access to that level of education is going to leave people even further behind. And if you think about it, the World Wide Web really connected us to share ideas, information, and let us learn from each other. And by not having access to that, you're going backwards while the rest of the population is moving forwards. And if you look at the question on who's limiting it, it is the governments, and whether
Mm,
that's for their own purposes, for restriction of their population to grow intelligently, to
yeah.
increase their value and to understand their current plights. I think that's massive problems that exist all over the world, and I think it's something that we do have to solve. And I don't know if that's done, holistically as a globe, or each of these governments have to take their part in understanding the importance of this with their people.
Yes, that's a different angle. If you're part of the government and you're watching us, this is just a bold truth from the people themselves. Some people feel like the government is the limit cap, of which it is to some extent. And this leads me to the next questions, and I'm coming to you, Professor Dr. Vero. What invincible barriers or walls keep communication out of economic and social opportunity? Are there invincible barriers apart from the government? Apart from the government, what
So,
is keeping people from communicating in the world out here? Mhm.
yeah, the invisible walls still keep communities out of economic and social opportunities. And
Yeah.
these include number one, like the geographical barriers, such as the lack of transportation or physical infrastructure, hindering access to jobs, financial services, and education. Then it could be social biases and discrimination based on gender, ethnicity, caste, class, or disability,
Mhm.
perpetuating exclusions that we basically call from social and economical systems. It could be economic constraints that include poverty and low income, which limit access to quality education, healthcare, and financial markets. Then it could also be educational barriers like poor financial literacy and lack of access to high quality learning resources, restricting upward mobility. The lastly and the most important that I would like to talk about is the digital divide, which some of our panelists have talked about, characterized by limited internet access and low digital literacy, restricting participants to basically digital economics and remote educations.
Mhm.
Institutional discriminations and system biases in policies or workplace practices, glass ceiling, lack of
Yes.
mentorships, blocking certain groups from leadership positions and advancements. There could be regulatory hurdles such
Yeah.
as stringent documentations,
Mhm.
requirements for banking or social services, disproportionately excluding marginalized groups. Social economic backgrounds can be one of the major influences which would lead to less access to networks, keeping
Yeah.
lower income groups from representations or success in leadership roles, exclusions from informal networks that we
Uh-huh.
generally talk about, such as social groups or business contacts, which are
Yes.
vital for career growth and opportunities.
All right. All right.
Lastly, I would say about the cultural mindsets which
Mm.
may discourage creativity or entrepreneurships in some communities, limited economic development. And in
Yes.
this world of AI, in this world of technology, accessibility cannot be different from inclusion. That's my request that I would talk to my fellow panelist on
Yeah,
it.
I love how we're going. We're just here to agree, and to disagree and to find what is the really barrier, what is the real invisible barrier, and everyone chiming in. Your expressions are right. and that is what we want to hear. And there's someone who is watching you, and they're hearing what you have to say. And Dr. Vera, thank you for listing all those things up. I felt like you highlighted all of them. Ian, do you feel like there's a solution to all invincible barriers? And as well as Lauren, do you feel like there's a solution for that? This is as a follow up briefly. Ian, what do you feel is the solution?
I
Briefly.
think my viewpoint. I think this is a very. I have a clear answer. Like,
Yeah.
I think the biggest invisible words could be human mindset. Many people just keep things a secret. Like when they have some sort of like a very valuable information, they don't want to share it with others because
Yes.
if that information is kind of valuable, that could create money. I know about it, but especially in terms of education, people hesitate to share things with others. It's because of the fierce competition, in school environment. At the same time, even though there are like a bunch of innovative education tools out there, that doesn't mean anything in many senses because because of the heavy marketing cost. Like that's what I'm battling at the moment. I would like teach so many ordinary students, but they don't even know about this kind of technology and how to utilize this very affordable international school level education. And I would like to mention what kind of Rui contradicted. Of course,
Yes.
like inclusion means accessibility, but that's not all. Like in Korea, I mean, internet is fully, connected to everybody, but that
Mhm.
doesn't make in many senses. Many students don't even know how to utilize AI for their learnings. And
Mm.
like, for example, in my, among one of my students, like she's very young, like a grade 3 student, and she
Yeah.
doesn't learn anything from online, or she doesn't have any access to digital devices, but
Yes.
she codes very well. So
Oh.
in education, actually digital access might not mean much in many
Hmm.
senses, especially for young learners. So in that sense, like accessibility cannot solve like all the issues about inclusion. I think that's
Mm.
yes.
That's a very interesting view, and thank you for sharing such examples. It keeps the learning wheel going. Lauren, what is your take on that? How do we remove these invisible barriers? What are the solutions you have seen so far?
Yeah. Hi. So I think that the people that are affected mostly like by this are the countries that don't have as much accessibility to the internet. So just working to provide those solutions and hopefully get experiences that can run on like a base level of internet, and creating opportunities for those countries to learn about the tools that we have over here, and essentially sending programs and stuff like that to countries that are maybe not as fortunate as far as like technology and moving as fast as we are. Because I think it's also important to remember that innovation comes from diverse backgrounds. So having opportunities for these countries and people to also have a say in building the internet is really important as well.
That's right. That's right. And I think it applies everywhere. I would say it applies everywhere. It's just that some countries are more affected than the others. And thank you for sharing that. I think this is also a multi-stakeholder approach. Sean, you've always talked about open innovation, but I just want to hear the consequences. What are the consequences of a connected world that still leaves billions out? And we're talking over 2 billion. That is according to the statistics. Over 2 billions are still out, and some of them we don't even know them. They're not even included in the stats. So, what is the consequences of leaving such behind?
I mean, I think we kind of touched upon it in some of the other questions. I think every person all over the world gives a viewpoint into their social kind of upbringing, their culture, the things, their perspectives, and what they see. And I think by sharing those things, I think it makes everything better in general. And I think what happens is if you exclude these a lot of people, they're going to fall even further behind, and it becomes I don't want to say the burden of everyone else, but at the end of the day, it's our responsibility to hopefully uplift our fellow humanity versus really just taking advantage of the technologies for ourselves. And I think we're going to be successful because a lot of us, we're at the, we're in societies where I live in big cities, but we don't understand or comprehend what it's like to be in smaller cities and countries that don't have the same resources that we've had ever since we were born, right? And I think
Yeah.
the challenge is I think it's just going to exacerbate the problem that we have today with people with lack of internet. And so as you keep adding more technologies that is needed by internet access, it's only going to get worse for these individuals. And so I believe at some point we have to raise our hands and support. But I don't know if that's necessarily each country leading the way. I mean, I think, like you said, the government themselves have to make choices on why they're limiting these technologies to their people and decide, is that important to them? And
Hmm.
it's a massive challenge. I'm not sure how you perfectly fix it because if it
Yeah.
were, then everyone would have internet access today in one way. But I do believe, like, if you look at like what Elon Musk is doing and others with
Hmm.
satellite things where you don't actually have to put a lot of infrastructure into places and you can easily get access as those devices get cheaper. Hopefully more and more people will actually get internet access, and then that will drive, I think, the AI revolution that I believe is definitely going to happen.
Yes, that is a very optimistic view. I'd also comment on Starlink, right? I've seen it in African rural places that you could never imagine internet would reach, but we have now access to it. So even the devices, I'm seeing a lot of Chinese companies coming with the very accessible, affordable devices that even the oldest and anyone can afford them. So I'm also optimistic on that, but I'm also aware of the dangers of just leaving a whole bunch of people behind. It's gonna be two separate worlds in the same app. Rui and Dr. Veni, do you have something to briefly add to that? What do you think are the consequences of leaving people behind?
Because technology is connecting all part of the world. So today, how we have been met, and this is the way when we connected, it is a sharing of different views geographically and personal experience. This is what the improvement starts.
Mhm.
That is what the development comes.
Yes, I agree. Rui, I see you.
Yeah, I think we've all said it. It's really just building up to a more unfair, a more sectarist world, again, with one single vision that tries to explain the world to everybody else. And that's not what we need. We already had enough of that.
Yes, I agree with you. And let me just shift angles, and I'm gonna also go back to a little bit of inclusion because today we are talking about the realities of today, and inclusion is the overarching reality. Does inclusion end with optics instead of power redistribution? And when we say optics, we have seen a lot of government projects. We have seen a lot of companies launching projects. They will announce this fund has been released to do this and that for this community. A lot of projects are always announced every day. There's always a PR, a press release that has been just launched into the world of something that's going to happen. But does it end there? Is there a formula for power redistribution? What is the results of that? Do we have like results that are tangible that can be really be traced back that this project when it was launched, this is what it accomplished when it comes to inclusion? And I want to hear from you, Dr. Vera, and anyone can also chime in on that. What is your take?
See, inclusion that ends in optics refers to superficial or symbolic gestures
Mhm.
that create a positive appearance without changing underlying power structure.
Mhm.
True inclusion requires redistribution of power and resources to dismantle systemic inequalities and enable equitable participation. Optics alone can serve as a form of performative inclusion, which may placate calls for changes but does not empower marginalized groups. Power redistribution shifts decision making authority access to resources, and policy influences, which will enable sustainable social and institutional transformations.
Yes.
Without power redistribution, inclusive efforts risking maintaining status quo inequalities while projecting an image of progress. It would always be very hazy.
Mm-hmm.
Genuine inclusion balances visibility and representation, that is optics that we call, with structural changes that redistribute power and opportunity. Lastly, I would like to add is scholars and activists often critics environmentalists with inclusion ends with optics as um, uh, underlying real equity goals. So for me, it's a very challenging part how you would like to end with optics instead of power redistribution.
Yes, Dr. Vera, thank you for even highlighting that. But I'm just curious. I have a follow-up to that. Power redistribution. How do we change this power redistribution? We have seen, personally, I come from a place where we've seen one president ruling for decades, and it's just so hard. That is where they call dictatorship, and I know it happens in most parts of the world where one person may stay in government or the same system may stay in a certain system for decades and decades and decades and decades. It's only PR. So how do you change power redistribution? Is power to the people or power to the person who decides to give it out? What is your take?
See, for me, what I basically want to say, power redistribution means it should be overall. It has to be with the technological pace that is being going along. And now, when there is dictatorship or when there is no change of power, that political areas I would not look into it. That's another geopolitics that is playing a big role into it. Now, when we talk about optics and inclusivity and bringing technology down to the people, that is where it has to be very symbolic gestures has to be done. How
Yes.
you would create a positive environment and take the technology as it is coming. You cannot be away from it. You
Mm-hmm.
have to be one of it, and you cannot say that I'm not going to be a part of it. In India, we have coming back. We were we had faced lots of challenges in early 80s and 90s, and now with our strong leaderships and AI is being included in our ecosystem
Yes.
from the very early stages. So we train the trainers, we do inclusivity,
Yes.
we talk about redistributions. So it depends of your again as your leaders, the thought processes of the leaders, how
Yeah.
you take it up to the next level. That
Mm.
plays a very major role.
Yes.
Otherwise, the structural changes, whatever you say, there would always be a divide between the two. You know,
Yes, that's right.
matlab they would not be true inclusions. That's what I mean to say. If you
Yeah.
want to have true inclusions, you must be the decision makers, whoever is there in authority, has to take a call for it.
That's right. That's right. I couldn't agree more. Thank you for following up. That is a very interesting perspective. Rui and Khan, I want to hear your perspective on this power distribution briefly.
I completely agree with what Dr. Vera said. I just want to add to that if we look right now, the distribution of technology access or internet in the world, if we look at it right now, there is no physical or geographical reason for it to not be all over the world. The reasons are substantially economic and financial.
Yes.
The power of technology, or the ones that own technology, and especially the internet right now, we all know that is, Google doesn't do anything for free. all these companies are taking, are doing this technology because they make money from it. And right now they make money from selling or using our data for advertising, marketing, etc. So
Yes.
they should also be the ones who should invest in that distribution. And they are the ones who are responsible for that inclusion or exclusion of determined regions. So just
Mm-hmm.
wanted to add that simple perspective.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. Khan, what is your perspective on redistribution of power? Your mic, please. Ian?
All right. Okay. It just
Yes,
got me
there we go.
a bit confused. All right. I mean, so you asked me how power distribution can be possible.
Yes.
All right. I think I think I think everybody knows education. Education. So even young children, like as long as they are well educated, as they grow up, they will learn how to overcome their hardship in their life, and that they will learn how to upgrade their life, and like by learning and more. And so in that
Mm-hmm.
sense, learning how to fully utilize AI is very significant. I know about this, but this is, like I said, it's very paradoxical. They should not heavily rely on AI, but they also they need to learn how to fully utilize it. So I think the teacher's role is very important. So at the same time, I mean, personally, I don't have a very like a strong faith in governmental like
Yes.
system nowadays because of the fast pace of AI change. So
Yes.
in that sense, I really private sectors, private businesses, private entities who have well aligned, like globalized mission and vision, like like the perspective of God, like those like humanitarian private sectors will play a big role in the future. I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as they have more benefits from some governmental bodies, or as long as they
Yes.
work together with like maybe like United Nations or something like that, they might be able to flourish even more. So I think they must play a big role. Yeah.
That
Too
is
many
very
things,
interesting.
like
Very
private
interesting.
public sectors go corrupted, and the decision making processes and time. I mean, it takes so long and it's too
Yeah.
complicated. You cannot keep up with the pace of AI change. Yeah.
Yeah, that is very interesting and indeed thought provoking. Dr. Ven, I'm coming to you and also Lauren. How do we measure who benefits versus who is merely represented? How do we measure that? How can we tell who is benefiting and who is just merely represented? Dr. Venu.
Because the benefit is that entire society and world, but it's lies that the benefit how effectively we are using for what reason we are using this technology. For example, if you look at some countries have been producing so many graduates, but the produced graduates are not utilized within the country. Those
Mm-hmm.
graduates educated is migrating to some country, right?
Yeah.
Why today entire society and world is coming imbalance? Because the governments has to encourage local manpower to be educated to the level of technology expertise so that
Mm-hmm.
we can minimize the migration. But today what is happening in some countries, 100% the migration. The moment they have been passed out, they want to land somewhere. That needs to be have a balance. The technology has to be implemented. Every
Mm-hmm.
country has to invest their resources to
Yes.
develop their community and young generation to involve in the technology, not from hiring from other countries too much, because that is a society imbalance.
All right, I hear you. Lauren, what is your take? What have you seen from where you're from? What is your suggestion?
Yeah, I think to measure benefits versus just being represented, we need to measure metrics that go beyond participation, like the equity of outcome. So, like, did this initiative create substantial jobs, education, and community, or just community ownership? Um, if inclusion doesn't improve someone's real world circumstances, it's at that point it's just performance, not progress.
That was well said and briefly. If it doesn't change any life or it doesn't impact That was just a performance. I like that. Sean, I also want to come to you on this and also just pass you on the next question. In a globalized economy, who carries the heaviest burden of progress? Is it the government? Is it people? Is it innovators like yourselves? Is it educators? Who carries the burden for progress? Sean, share what is in your mind.
Man, that's a long-winded question.
Yeah.
It can kind of go in a lot of directions. I like that. This is almost like that could be like an hour discussion just on this. I mean, at the end of the day, we pay taxes, at least in the US. And so those taxes should go to people that are hopefully smarter than each of us as an individual to create policies that make our government or our space better. And that should go across, the world with different policies and whatnot. um, I feel like there's a lot of I wouldn't say negative, but there's like this darkness in this discussion, and I want to believe that technology can bring light and it can bring opportunity that typically is not doesn't exist globally, and I believe AI and Ian, this might be a tough take, or you might actually agree, but I really believe that if we can all have equal education, we all can actually raise up together, and it'll be on the merits of our hard work, on the efforts that we put towards there, and our interest in those education and whatever area that we want to be an expert in, and really have an equality as far as competing against other people, no matter what your race is or where you're born or how much money you have. So imagine if you can have a Harvard level education at the cost of Chat GPT or something like that. I mean, could you imagine the ability? Because at the end of the day, it was always the rich and famous that had access to the best professors, the best education, the best
Mhm.
ability to get connected to family connections or whatever that looks like. And I believe if we all had an equal education, or the ability to strive for an equal education at the cost of next to nothing, that we will be judged on the merits of our character, our
Yeah.
values, and our principles, versus how lucky we are and where we're born on this planet. And so I believe that at the end of the day, I'm hoping technology will raise the barrier, and really open up the ability for us to compete naturally and really have a voice at every level. And I think that's really going to be an important step for all of us.
Yes, and I can see the burden. You carry the burden of seeing the world educated equally. Thank you for beautifully highlighting that. Rui, do you have a suggestion to that? Who carries the burden?
Um, yeah, that's a great question. I think, right now it's been mostly on the tech developers, being big tech or individual people like us. There's always, I think there's always been, progress has been made, and I like, there's the garage myth, which is fantastic, but it's a myth. People didn't build things in garages; they built in nice garages with, you know, parents that had money to support them.
Yes.
But I do believe that, and I think here is, again, education. If we have access to education, we will have much more innovation and much more free and distributed innovation, because all of us are paired, have a parity. So I completely agree with Sean and, the access to education. But who has the heaviest burden? I don't know.
Yes.
It's a mix now.
Uh-huh. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Dr. Vera, who carries the biggest burden as we close off, because I see our time is as quick as it comes, as quick as it goes. But Professor, close us off. Who carries the biggest burden here?
It's again a very big evolving challenges, and priorities are there. So as digital technology is becoming increasingly central to everyday work, the definition of inclusion must adopt to emerging trends such as AI, VR, and remote work, while addressing persistent disparities in connectivity and literacy. So, in a nutshell, what I would say that the digital era is making sure no one is left behind as technology progresses, empowering everyone to thrive in a constantly evolving digital landscape. So, everybody is responsible equally for the development. That's what, in a nutshell, I can say so.
Yes, everyone is equally responsible. I would go with that. I would run away with that. I have 1 extra minute. Perhaps I can close it with you, Ian. What is your takeaway briefly?
So obviously, uneducated people, they would like, carry the heaviest burden of progress, they, just because they are uneducated. So that is the most important question here. And but so at the same time, I think the language also is very important. Like,
Yes.
well, I mean, I, I don't want to say that, but English is the world language, but in fact, it is the world language at the moment. So,
Mhm.
like, knowing how to speak English is like it's a really big deal nowadays, and
Yes.
knowing certain language means they understand the culture and the globalized atmosphere, and then the the trading atmosphere, and then the trend and culture. And I think that's like, I think one single language is necessary for humanity to
Mhm.
minimize the conflict as well. Right? So
Yeah.
I think so language learning is it's all about education as well. So uneducated people will definitely carry out the heaviest burden of progress for sure.
All right. Okay. So, if you're watching us, please tell us who you think carries the biggest burden. But each and every of your expression was valued. We learned from you, and thank you so much for joining us. Please, our audience, follow these speakers, follow their LinkedIn. They're just on our website, and perhaps you can reach out to someone who you think you can collaborate with. And that is it from us on this panel. Our Gather was well. Over to you, GatherVerse team. Thank you so much.